morning, everybody. Greg Reibman here with the Chamber. Want to welcome everyone to this event. We're going to get started right away at 9 o'clock because we've got a lot to talk about. Welcome to today's debate between the two candidates running for mayor of Newton on November 2nd, incumbent Mayor Ruthanne Fuller and former Newton City Councilor Amy Sangiolo. Our event today is sponsored by the UMass Amherst Mount Ida campus and Century Bank. We're appreciative to both of them for their support. I will be moderating the event today, asking my own questions and those suggested by others. I'm sure I already have too many questions, or more questions than we'll have time for, so it's unlikely we will take any submitted via chat, but I encourage everyone who's watching to feel free to comment as we go along and add your own sense and own thoughts into the comment section. Except for closing statements at the end, we will not be using a timer. Our goal is to have a productive, informative conversation. And once I've asked the question, I will encourage the candidates to talk with each other. But this morning, we are definitely in favor of the filibuster, ending the filibuster. So in the interest of time, I reserve the right to interrupt or move to the next topic. And candidates, I apologize in advance, but I will interrupt. I have created this little device here to maybe help you. We dug deep into the chamber budget for that. And I also went into the basement and found this. So we will try to use those. Hopefully we won't have to use those. But again, my apologies. I'm going to interrupt you as we need to move on to different topics. Finally, I want to say that I've known these two extraordinary women for many years, and I consider them both to be my friend. We've worked on many initiatives, sometimes all three of us together. We've had our professional disagreements as well. We'll probably have a few more today. But I am, and we should all be grateful to them for their willingness to serve and for making time to talk to the chamber today. So let's dig right in with the first question, which I'm going to direct to Amy Sangiolo. You have proposed creating a new small business liaison position to assist and provide resources to the city's village center businesses. Newton already has an economic development director. Do you feel the economic development director isn't doing enough to help our villages, or why do you think we need to create a separate position?
So so in going around to all the different villages, you know that I've been doing my run with Amy's. I've been talking to a lot of the store owners, the retail shops, as well as their restaurants. And I feel like there just isn't enough outreach to them. There isn't enough support. We do have an economic development person, but I think there has to be somebody who's designated to our small businesses. I mean, we're looking at in each village empty storefronts, right? Restaurants who needed support. It was difficult for them to get their permitting and their licensing and get that outdoor seating. Folks are struggling to try to market events that will happen in our villages to bring more people into and explore the village centers. And that's something that I think we need, and I don't see that happening.
Mayor, do you think we need a separate person to focus on villages, or how do we address our village needs?
I'm really proud that we already have a small business liaison, Deborah Balin, who sits on the board of your chamber. You know her well. She came to Newton with an extraordinary background because she had served Needham in that role as well. And with Deborah's help, we have given out $610,000 worth of grants with no strings attached to over, I think we're up to 54 businesses right now, including women and minority businesses. With Deborah's help and Allison Yee's help, we've created Project Pop-Up to fill up vacant storefronts. We've created Newton Hires. With your help, Greg, we partnered with the chamber on that. So we're linking one of the problems that our small businesses, actually businesses of all size, have right now are with staffing. So we're linking businesses to the staffing they need. All of those initiatives are coming from in part with our economic development planner. I would also just add one more thought on that. For example, we experienced some flooding. We've had some terrible weather events. The day before flooding was anticipated, what was Deborah Balin doing? going to the low-lying areas where businesses are, making sure they had everything they needed from the city ahead of the storm.
Councilor Sangiolo, I'm getting that you think that's not enough. What new steps would you take to make our village besides hiring a person to focus on it?
Again, I think we need a designated person, somebody who is going to help these small businesses who are struggling and staying in their retail shops and in their restaurants. I mean, you know, Newton Hires may be a great program. I have not seen the data on that. I believe that's part of the Mass Hires program. So I'd be interested to see what businesses have reached out, how many people have actually taken advantage of that program. That data is not available and it should be published on the website. In terms of Project Pop-Up, Allison Yee is a very good friend of mine, and I'm glad that she started that program and that Newton decided to go and partner with that. I think it's Newton, Needham, and Melrose, if I recall. And those are good ways to start filling up our empty retail spaces and give small businesses the opportunity to come into the city, but they need more. If I were mayor, I would make sure that we use ARPA funds to direct assistance for rental and mortgage assistance to these small businesses. I would have the small business liaison be the person to be the one-stop shop to help them walk the small businesses through the permitting and licensing process. And again, from what I'm hearing from the small businesses, that's what is missing. And that's what I want to provide to them. So thank you.
And in fact, Deborah is our concierge for our small businesses. They all have her cell phone. They reach out to her regularly. So I'm proud that we're already doing that. And by the way, we will and always need to do more. So we surround Deborah with a team. So if somebody wants to start a business, they work through Deborah and she's linking them to the fire department to help get permits, or ISD, or whoever the right people are in the planning department. So we surround, it's not just Deborah by herself, thankfully.
What
So
new
I
steps-
just, may I
Yep.
just respond? I mean, it's this conversation. That's great. I mean, look, Greg knows that I was trying to help a friend try to find out information about opening up a business. This information should be posted on our website. It should
And
be
it
easy to accept. I have walked through the website, Ruthanne, and unfortunately, it's not that easy. I can print out reports that give me very useless information. I understand that Deborah is the point person that I could go to. In fact, she reached out to me and said, have your friend contact me. The information should be readily available. Not everybody feels comfortable or confident when they're wanting to to open a business. They want to see what are the steps online. They want somebody to walk them through the process, not have a link to ISD or planning. They want all that information, one stop, and someone who walks them through the process from day one to the final opening. And from opening, what are we doing in terms of creating more of a fanfare for these businesses so that people know that they're around. We don't have a newspaper anymore to go and market these companies. We need the economic development small business liaison to be doing that kind of marketing to make sure that people are aware of the types of businesses that are around. We need to work with the different businesses in our villages to create a synergy so that people will come to a village and stay. Go to the restaurants, go down to, grab ice cream, go get coffee over at this coffee shop. Sorry.
Mayor Fuller, one quick response and then I would move on to the next question.
Just say this mayor is always out at ribbon cuttings and trying to drive businesses, customers to our small businesses. And we're getting the word out pretty well. We look forward to other ideas to do it even better in the years ahead.
Great, thank you. Next question for Mayor Fuller. Earlier this year, the Newton Coalition of Black Residents asked you to fund a Director of Diversity, Equity, Inclusion position, a full-time position at City Hall. The idea had the support of the League of Women Voters, among others, but rather than create this new position, you decided to hire a consultant. Why?
Well, first of all, as mayor, the first day I was sworn into office for the first time in Newton's history, I created the position of Director of Community engagement and inclusion. And that person sits in the office closest to me. So I didn't wait to do that. And we are working closely with our partners to think through how to institutionalize diversity, equity, and inclusion. Many of you know that I grew up in Detroit, and in my teenage years, sorry about that, were forged in the crucible of race and inequality and anti-Semitism. And I remember my parents saying we needed to create systemic change. Systemic change did not happen in the 60s, 70s, 80s, and 90s. And it is incumbent upon us to make lasting change. That's hard work.
So
one of the areas I've
appreciate
focused
that,
on
but-
is
But
policing.
why not hire a full-time person as the
We
resident
do
counsel?
have a full-time person, Greg. We already, and we're going to use the consultant to help us decide, do we need additional staffing? If so, precisely what areas do we need that additional work in? We have a lot of work to do internally within our city government across our departments to making sure DEI becomes real. We have work to do, for example, with procurement. We have outward facing work to do. I don't know if any of you were able to join me at Albemarle Field this weekend, where we had a great day with Indigenous people here in Newton and across the region. This work is broad and deep, and we need to make it actually work. I'll also just add one last thing. All of our department heads have now gone through 4 rounds of training on DEI. Now the hard work is turning those into systemic change, procedures, processes, systems. And we need help figuring out exactly how to do that. I am one who will raise my hand and say, let's learn from best practices from other cities. Let's use the experts and combine that with a group here in Newton. We want to have a DEI committee working with us to do that. That's how we did police reform in the last year.
Thank you.
And that's what I want to apply when we think about
Counselor
institutionalizing.
Sangiolo, a year and a half after George Floyd, is this enough? Has the city done enough?
No, it has not done enough. I'm glad that the schools have a DEI director and now as an assistant director, but we definitely need to elevate the fact that our work staff, our workforce, our boards and commissions do not reflect the diversity of our city, and we need to do more. There are 2 ways to go about it, right? You can hire a consulting firm to help you put a municipality. Give the municipality a strategy, or you can go directly and hire a director. And that's my approach. This is an issue that is very important to me. I didn't grow up I grew up in Weehawken, New Jersey as only a handful of Asian Americans in my community, in a predominantly white community. When I was growing up, and to this day, right now, I still feel the pressure of racism, right? So I remember my earliest childhood memories, was walking into a classroom with kids chanting chink, 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 right? As I'm walking into a classroom and my teacher's not doing anything. I know how racism can affect somebody. And that's why it's such an important issue to me. So I would definitely hire a director of equity and inclusion, and not just sprinkle our boards and commissions with racial, ethnic, and gender diversity, but really give them the opportunity to have real equity and inclusion in our planning and decision-making, because that's what's really important, and that's what's missing now.
I couldn't agree more, Ms. Sangiolo. That's why I hired a director first day in office.
So
Your
what-
director
I'm-
does not have the skill set or the training. currently. Your initial director didn't. I'm not sure about your current director, but that's what's missing. We need to make sure that the person who is in charge of this actually has the skill set and the training to run through a real diversity and equity program for the city.
You might choose to be a little more careful with your minimization of the person who is our director of community
I think she's a
engagement.
fabulous person in terms of
And
community engagement and inclusion, but it's different when it comes to diversity.
I would
Mayor,
say
I
her
have one-
skills and experience are remarkable.
I'm just confused about one thing. Why is it that the Coalition of Black Residents asked you to do this if you had already hired someone?
They understandably want to add additional resources and time on this, and we're going to do it right. We're going to think it through. What additional skills and experience do we want to surround this person with? Might it, for example, be a person who particularly focuses on recruiting, hiring, training, development, promotions? Might it be somebody who's working more closely with our Human Rights Commission, who has an important role with this? Is it somebody who focuses more on procurement? What are the skill sets? Where are we going to be leaning in? How do we institutionalize this in the years to come? Let's think it through and do it right.
All right, I'm going to move on to the next question. We may come back to some of that in a little bit. Communities across the Commonwealth have used tax breaks to get employers to move to their town. Needham did it twice. They got TripAdvisor that way. They got NBC Universal that way. Would you ever give a tax break to a company to come here? And what would be your criteria? Let's start with Councilor Sangiolo.
Sure, I would definitely give tax breaks. It depends on the type of industry that's coming here. We have to identify which industries that we want. We have to make sure that we have the available resources to provide the business and make sure that that business is committed to employing city residents, right? So those would be my criteria.
Mayor Fuller?
I would be very reluctant to do that type of tax break here in Newton. I'll give you a couple of reasons why. We recently had an amazing large global company move to their headquarters to Newton, Bright Horizons, and we did that without a tax break. I'm in close touch with Northland and Riverside as they think through who's going to occupy their office buildings. They don't see a tax break being necessary. Instead, where I want to invest our funds is making sure we've got things like the investments in West Newton Square and Newtonville. We invested more than $5 million in each of those projects so that the infrastructure supports businesses. I would also add, as an alderman, I think I wasn't a city councilor yet, we work closely with the state in order to make sure that we could attract over on Route 9, New England Development created, revitalized the shopping mall there, the Chestnut Hill Square. What we did is have the state provide the financial incentive, not the city's taxpayers.
So I just want to say that the tax break that Needham offered TripAdvisor, that was a vacant, empty, rundown office park until they did that. And you look at it today, and it really is a lot to do with TripAdvisor deciding to be there first.
We were successful with Riverside and Northland without needing to do that, Greg, as you can see.
Councilor Sangiolo?
I just want to say that, Riverside went through many iterations. I'm not holding my breath to see if they're going to come back for another iteration. I'm glad that we're attracting more tech industries. That's terrific, and we definitely need to do more to attract more industries like that to our city. And like I said, I am happy to look at tax breaks and other incentives to attract businesses. I think there's someone had mentioned to me, I think it was at the Upper Falls Village Day. They had reached out to the city because they have a bunch of investors who work over in Cambridge, but there's no room for growth in Cambridge anymore. They're filled, their capacity is overwhelmed. So they were looking to see if they can start up something here, but that conversation never went anywhere. Again, we need to, people come in with ideas. We need to jump on those ideas, find out how we can explore those, find out whether they can be implemented, and have those conversations. Again, I'm open to anything that will incentivize more commercial businesses to come to our city.
So a question I told both of you I was going to ask you, if you could attract one global employer to come move to Newton, who would it be? Either one of you go first.
First of all, I'm thrilled that this did just happen with Bright Horizons. So we've got a great example here. I'd say a company like Moderna would be what I'd be excited to move into our new life sciences biotech complex that we're creating with the Riverside Center and at Riverside. A company like that, I think, would employ a lot of Newton residents. It has great pay, good benefits. And oddly enough, the beauty of those types of companies is that they impact rush hour less. The way the traffic works in the life sciences, they kind of come and go at all hours and aren't bunched. So it's a win-win-win.
Councilor Sangiolo, who would be on your wish list for a company to attract it?
Yeah, so that was a difficult question. So I wasn't sure. So I'm torn. Do I go with like a Gates Foundation to help our nonprofits and spend money here in the city, or do I go with a high-tech company? So maybe something like a Microsoft or, an Apple to come here and employ our city. I think that would be kind of cool, right? I mean, think about the opportunities for our kids in our high schools to move into high tech. I don't know where they'd be located. I don't know what land we have available that we could offer, but like I said, torn between, something like a foundation versus high tech.
Okay, let's spend a few minutes talking about housing and development. As we all know, there's nothing more divisive in the discourse in Newton today. I think you both walk a fine line on this. Many of your supporters probably wish you'd be even further in their direction than you may be. But let me start with this question, and I'll start with you on this one there, Philip. When you're sworn in, if you're sworn in for a second term starting January 1st, how many new units of housing should Newton approve during your your next 4 years as mayor?
Greg, very gently, I think you're asking the wrong question. That is at least not how I think about this. I'm instead of a top-down type of person, I'm a bottom-up. Where do we have opportunities that make sense for Newton to add, often it's housing and particularly mixed-use housing, so that I don't impose a number from the top down. We had a really
Mayor, you were part of the mayor's coalition that did come up with goals, and you agreed to the goals.
That was for the greater Boston region. I was very careful, and you pressed me on this personally, Greg. Did I have a specific number for Newton in mind? And you'll notice that I was very careful to say no, because instead, when you look at an opportunity, we have the two largest opportunities that may ever come before Newton in the next 10, 20, 30 years at Riverside and Northland. We created with lots of input from residents and great leadership from the city council, the right amount of housing that would work in those particular areas with the particular type of public transit, or in Northland's case, they created their own transit. So that's, I think, the appropriate thing for Newton to say what is right in each area and not to impose a number upon us. And you'll know, by the way, at Northland, I believe we have 123 permanently affordable housing units, And at Riverside, I think it's 111. Don't hold me to those precise numbers. So we're including affordable housing in them.
Councilor Sangiolo, how many new units of housing should you like to see approved while you're mayor for 4 years?
Oh, so I want to see more truly affordable housing created in the city. I don't think that we're creating that. I don't have a particular number, but I do know that we're nowhere near where we should be at. That's why I support increasing our inclusionary zoning to 25% as opposed to the 17% that we have now. I want us to be compatible or with at least and compete with the 40B developments that we're seeing here in the city. 40B, as you know, Greg, is not all truly affordable housing, although all the units in a 40B project get counted towards our SHI inventory. That's a real problem. So we're nowhere close to the number of affordable units that we need. I don't believe in the trickle down housing theory that you just open it up to the market and you just allow more and more housing. I don't believe that the supply demand, the simple economics 101 actually works. We haven't seen that work in any of the other communities that have upzoned. If you really want to create more truly affordable housing, that's what you need to do. You need to create more truly affordable housing. That means incentivize, subsidize, whatever it takes to do that. In terms of, I'm sorry, I just lost my train of thought.
If I could build on this, I am really proud that in the 4 years that I've been mayor, we have permitted 514 permanently affordable housing units. That compares to, I believe it was 8 or 9 in the previous mayor's tenure. I am so proud that we persisted, and we now have the West Newton Armory, which we're transforming into 100% permanently affordable housing. Perhaps in that 30 to 60% range, we'll work on that.
Mayor,
I am so proud that somebody like Two Life Communities is coming forward with middle income senior housing. It is so creative and so important up on the JCC
Excuse me,
campus.
Mayor, do you believe in the trickle down housing theory that your Councilor Sangiolo does not believe in? Does that help?
So it's, I'm going to answer it in a different way, Greg. It doesn't feel very comfortable to me at all to have a house demolished in Newton, a single family, and have a two family go up, both costing $1.5 million. That does not create affordable housing in any way. I have heard the theory, just build more housing, and eventually in some community somewhere, as people move from one house to the next, it helps. Again, I'm Newton's mayor. What I want is what's best for Newton. And by the way, for Newton to be successful, we need to welcome all kinds of people. So we do need all kinds of homes. That's the diversity that we need in Newton.
So, Greg, I work with the housing team at the Consumer Advocacy Response Division at the Attorney General's office. So the clients that I work with, the consumers that I work with, we're not building housing for them. We're not building family-oriented housing. We're not building at the 50% and below. We're not getting to the most vulnerable who need housing. And frankly, Ruthanne, with all due respect, you may have been mayor during the time that all these projects were permitted, but that had nothing to do with you. That really has a lot to do with the city council. And the city council was the one who vetted these developments, and a lot of these developments were in the pipeline for a long time. And that's an issue, right, Greg? I mean, we talked about permitting.
I'll
So,
just mention one thing. The mayor does matter, and I'll just I believe I was the only city councilor between the two of us, Amy, who did vote for what is now called TRIO. So I do have a good record on this.
And I
So
was the only
let me
city
ask you,
councilor who pushed back on Austin Street to get 6 more additional housing units, right?
let, let me let me ask you a question about both of those things. So you opposed Northland and you opposed Trio, and we'll get to Austin Street in a minute. So how do you feel about Trio now that it's up? Would Newtonville have been better if it was still those decrepit old buildings that it was? If it would have been there if we didn't approve that project?
No, I think the project would have been better if we had more affordable housing units in
Well, I
that
know, but
project.
you voted against it.
That's how I see it.
The project before you is the one that you have to vote on.
Well, the project that was before us for Austin Street was supposedly the project that we had to vote on, right? But with enough pushback by city councilors, well, I guess me, and maybe one other, that's how we got the additional affordable housing.
Great. So
Again, we
let
have to
me,
keep pushing and pushing to get more affordable housing. Do I think it's a fine project now? It's fine, but it would be a better project if it had more affordable units, right?
Mayor
Just
Fuller,
like North. Oh, I'm sorry, you didn't talk about Northland. Do you want to talk about Northland?
we can get that in a minute, but let me ask Mayor Fuller about Austin Street. So the Austin Street project, you were a yes vote on that. Councilor Sangiolo was a holdout vote until there were more additional housing units, affordable housing units added. Was she right? Was that the right approach?
It is great to keep asking for more affordable housing units, as long as we don't push a developer away by raising it so high that it just becomes uneconomic and they can't do it. So Amy did some nice work to get additional units. Additional units are great. And your original question, Greg, said, so in retrospect, as we look at Trio, it's great to have housing above the barn and housing above Mita. I think is interesting for us to look at the outdoor plaza at Bramway is kind of a thing of beauty. It's really working perfectly. The size, the location, what surrounds it. And I think the plaza at Trio isn't working as well. And I think that is worth studying and understanding. Am I glad that Trio got built? I sure am. And I'm so glad to have more people living in Newton in that kind of setting, especially as we have a commitment from the MBTA to, for the first time since it was badly designed to begin with, a commitment to redesign. So we have all 3 commuter rail stations be accessible in good condition with frequent service.
Councilor, go ahead.
No, Ruthanne had brought up a good point about, the commuter rail service, and I'm glad that they're starting to rethink about their cut on service. But gosh, what a slap in the face, right? We tell folks we're going to build transit-oriented development, and what happens? We build it, and then they cut it, right? So cut our service. I mean, talk about slap in the face. I am all for mixed-use development. I would love to see more of it in our village centers. I think most folks in Newton would support having 2 or 3 stories by right on top of our existing village businesses where there's only 1 stories, again, existing in our village centers. But people also want to see that we're really committed to affordable housing. The rents that we're seeing at some of these, like Trio and even even at Austin Street, the market rate rents are just out of the world. I mean, really. $3,000 or $4,000 a month, that's double my mortgage.
So I want to ask you a different question about 40B, but first you wanted to say something about Northland and why you didn't support that project?
Oh, sure. Yeah, I think Northland, it can be an exciting opportunity for the city to have something go there. I'm concerned about the size and scale of it, particularly since it's not transit oriented. I love the fact that they are going to shuttle folks over to the Green Line over at, I think it's Elliott Station, but it would have been really nice if they also shuttled folks over to the Needham commuter rail, although, I'm not sure if the commuter rail service is that great, right? But also bringing in shuttles directly into Boston would have been a nice factor. And again, it's only it's only reaching the 17% of affordability, and it would have been nice to have more.
So let me,
Just a correction, so it's on the record. Northland is, I believe the shuttles are going both directions. They are going to the Green Line in Newton Highlands and to Needham to the commuter rail. So they're going both directions. And they're every 10 minutes. It's a really exciting new part of this development, that because they weren't transit oriented, the city council worked hard to make them transit oriented. On their dime, they're doing a shuttle every 10 minutes. And I'll also just add, we're surrounding that with Newton in Motion, which is allowing people across Newton for $2 to get to village centers and to either the T or the commuter rail. And we're looking hard right now. We may be able to expand it so actually that you can pick anywhere in Newton to go. The driver shortage is what's constraining us from doing that right now.
so Councilor Sangiolo, I wanted to ask you a question about 40B. I read something where you wrote that you called 40B a sham, and you can explain your reason, but does that mean that if you were mayor, you wouldn't abide by this state law, or that you wouldn't work to meet the threshold, even if you don't agree with the law?
No, I called it a sham because as I alluded to before, all of the units depending on the 40B project, but on most of the 40B projects are counted, including are counted towards our subsidized housing inventory, right? So that means if you have like Dunstan East, right, 302 units and 25% are affordable units, all 302 count towards our SHI. Right, so it's not really creating enough affordable housing when all of the market rate units are also counted. So that's why I call it a sham. Was there another question? So I forgot.
No, that was it.
Okay.
I actually want to give one more question about housing, and then we'll move on to some other topics. Single family zoning strikes terror in the hearts of residents whenever they hear the term. It feels to me that we've really bandied this term around in a misleading and often deceitful way. Isn't it more true that when we're not talking about abolishing single family homes, we're talking about making it easier to build multifamily homes? And I'll go to you, Councilor Sangiolo, first.
Sure, yeah, it's kind of like branding, right? It's just like, defund the police, right? Are we really talking about police reform, right? So I didn't come up with the term of eliminating single family zoning. That was, born either out of the planning department or the city council at the time. Should we have more multifamily zones? We should definitely explore that. Where that goes needs to be carefully talked about, but I'm not ready. Like I said, I don't believe in upzoning throughout the city. I don't believe in getting rid of our single family zoning at least the ones that we have now. And I'll tell you why, because we already have the ability to increase density in our single family zones by having accessible dwelling units. And those are by right. People in single family zones can do that. And I think the problem is not enough people are moving in that direction, because I don't think that there's enough robust education about the program. And again, I think more assistance needs to be provided to residents for permitting of that and walking through. Maybe we need also to subsidize and incentivize folks to take up that opportunity to create these accessible dwelling units in our single family zones. I would be in favor of those detached garages that are already in existence to also be permitted for accessory dwelling units. I think that can be done either by right or administratively under an administrative review, as opposed to having to go for a special permit. Again, these tools are already available.
Mayor Fuller, how do we get the zoning conversation, the public to focus on the zoning conversation that's really before us, as opposed to one that people are fearful of?
I actually think you framed it very well, Greg. The idea of eliminating single family zoning is not at all on the table. It's not expected to be on the table. That's because we have such unique and special neighborhoods that you would never want to, across the board, eliminate single family zoning. The converse of that is equally true, though. I think we do want to look and see where we might want to add by right the ability to have 2 families, and those will be targeted areas that make sense, probably close to villages that have mass transit. And I think that's the important conversation that's ahead. We're focusing right now on our core villages, core commercial centers in the zoning redesign, and I'm very excited about that. The accessory dwelling units, it's great. While both Amy and I were city councilors, we moved forward on that. I think we were both proponents of that. I know we were both. And I think what some important work is to, it's not being used as much as I think could help families here in Newton and residents. So I do want to spend some time in the next year looking at that again. Do we need to tweak the ordinance a bit? Do we need to get the word out more? Are there permitting issues that are getting in the way? Because I think those are very compatible with our neighborhoods and help
Thank you, Mayor.
people live here.
Councilor Sangiolo, really quickly, and I want to move on. We've got a number of other topics to get to. Do you have something you wanted to add?
Yeah, just the problem, Ruthanne, is that eliminating single family zonings is not off the table. In fact, I believe it was tabled until after the election or until next year. And the other issue that I have to push back on you is that you keep using the phrase special and unique neighborhoods that we seem to want to protect. Well, you know, everyone thinks their neighborhoods are special and unique, and trying to figure out whose neighborhoods can have more density is just, you know, it's not an easy task. And I like I said, there are all, or maybe I didn't say, but there are already multifamily zones that we have here throughout the city. And what we're seeing now are the tear downs and replacements of these modestly sized homes to luxury units, and that's not making the city affordable. And that's what drives the biggest distrust in the city about eliminating single family zones and doing that trickle down housing theory. Thank you.
I think I just want to be really clear. I think I can speak for myself. I'll let somebody like Councilor Deb Crossley speak for herself, or City Council President Susan Albright speak for themselves. But I know no one is suggesting that we eliminate single family zoning in the city. And I don't know anyone who is supporting that. Period.
I want to move on, although the topic's somewhat related. I want to talk about the campaign in general. We know we live in divisive times. Too often it seems that Newton has started to emulate some of the tone of the national discourse in terms of the ways people conflict and talk to each other. As you well know, Newton elections can get nasty in the final days. How are you each prepared to keep us a productive, issue-focused campaign the rest of the way out? And I'll go with you first, Mayor Fuller.
So this is one of the discouraging parts of what is happening at the national level. We here in Newton are not immune from it at all. We are seeing, particularly on social media, but also I would say, in public meetings on Zoom.
So Mayor, if you could actually, I think we know the problem, maybe you could help us tell us what your role would be.
So I'd say there's important role for the mayor here. First of all, I always set the tone, and you will see that I listen intently. I welcome people's ideas. I reach out for it. But I always, whenever I am speaking or writing, I am providing feedback and words and tones that is always representative of somebody who is civil, who's compassionate, who believes in compromise, who wants to lift up why people love this city. But you've never seen me ever being disdainful or disrespectful. And I also, again, with our Director of Community Engagement of Inclusion, try to bring people with different points of view together.
I'm gonna stop you there
okay.
only because I'm keeping an eye on
Good
the
enough.
clock. Dr. Sangiolo, I have a couple follow-up questions here. So maybe just briefly about the tone of the campaign and how you want to go the rest of the way out.
Let's keep it about the issues, right? About the issues. There are definitely distinctions between the two of us, you know, whether it's our positions, whether it's about our management style or leadership style, how we listen, how we respond to residents. That's really what it's about. It gets kind of dicey because, you know, I'm running against an incumbent. So, you know, you have to look at the record, right? So, you know, you try to, again, you just keep it about the issues. I never want to, I want to make sure that, you know, Ruthanne was talking about setting the tone, and that is really important. We do have to set the tone. We have to make sure that no one with differing opinions are ever marginalized. I draw back again from, you know, how I grew up and what I experience as an Asian American. I don't like to be marginalized. I don't think people should be marginalized for having different opinions and different thoughts. So, you know, keep it about the issues. That's what, and the record.
I'd like to just take a moment and hopefully we can answer this segment quickly, but really with yes or no's. I think there's a political action group called the Save No Nantum PAC that has made a number of statements saying that city officials or elected officials are trying to end the Mary St. Carmen Festival, remove street murals, erase the Italian street lines that are on Adams Street. Do either of you favor doing any of these things, eliminating any of these things, yes or no?
I'm sorry, do we favor doing
You
that?
favor eliminating the Mary St. Carmen Festival, the
No.
murals, or the, okay, and you don't either, Mayor, right?
And I know of no city councilor who does either.
That was my next question. Do either of you know of any city councilor or any city official that is trying to eliminate these things in Newton? Amy Sangiolo, do you know of anyone who's trying to do this or supports that view?
I don't know of anyone who
Okay.
is trying to do it, but I don't know, I could say that I don't know anyone who supports that view.
Very good. So that's all. I just wanted to clarify that. So let me ask you one question in general. We know we've got political PACs. I think there's another one that's about to be announced. If a political PAC runs a campaign against your opponent, will you step up and say you'd rather not have them do that? Do you have a feeling about how political action committees might step into the final days of this campaign?
I don't know. I haven't had any political PAC with me, so I'm not sure what you're saying.
I think there are groups such as Right Sized Newton or Voters for a Vibrant Newton who are supporting some candidates over other candidates.
But I'm really talking about negative campaigning, not supporting campaigns. I guess instead of asking you a question, I'll just say, I hope that if we get negative campaigning from political action campaigns, you'll both tell them to back off, that you'd rather.
Yes. Yes.
So let me move on. I got a couple other topics. Back in 2018, Rigoberto Mendez, a Newton resident of 27 years, was ripped away from his family by ICE and deported to Guatemala. Do either of you know where he is today? Have any of you done anything since then to help bring him back to his family?
So we've been in touch with both the senators and the congressperson, and actually I spoke with somebody in the last 2 weeks who had just spoken with him, and he's still mired in the bureaucracy of immigration, and he's not very hopeful right now. So this is, as you know, not a city thing, but this is where you need your congressperson or your senators, and it's so discouraging what's going on in Washington, D.C. Feels very hard to influence what is such a great person in an awful situation.
Uh, Amy Sangiolo, do you have thoughts about this?
Yeah,
Would your
so
approach here be different?
I have not reached out to the family. I would, if you have the contact information, I'd be happy to. I've done immigration legal work. I went down to the border, you know, monitoring children held in detention camps. I know folks who could probably help, so I'm happy to help.
But you haven't done anything to date.
To date, no.
Yes, no, okay. Would you, Amy Sangiolo, would you impose a vaccine mandate for city and school employees?
I'd have to think about whether or not the employees are public facing or not. I'd also consider a test and stay program.
Mayor Fuller,
I'm
you
sorry,
haven't
test to
yet.
stay, sorry.
Mayor Fuller, you haven't yet imposed such a thing. Is there a reason why you haven't?
Oh, I think you know, Greg, that I have announced that I'm supporting a vaccine mandate without the testing alternative. Remember, the role of a mayor, my responsibility and my goal is that we work together to stop the spread of the virus, especially as our kids under 12 are not yet vaccinated. Looks like good news is coming in the next few weeks on that. But the bottom line is that the testing alternative doesn't work well with the Delta variant. Just a couple nights ago, I was with Dr. Jha, who I'd encourage everybody to listen to him because I asked him twice, is it okay to do vaccine with testing for employees, whether it's City of Newton or school employees or all the small businesses or businesses here in Newton, or do people just have to get vaccinated? And he gave a very coherent, full-throated.
Thank you, Mayor. I appreciate that, but the question really is, you say you support a vaccine mandate for employees, but you haven't imposed one, right?
Oh, so Greg, as you know, vaccine mandates, we have to work with our unions. This is subject to collective bargaining. Newton Public Schools, it is in place almost. Again, still working with a couple of unions on the school side, and I'm in close conversation with everyone.
There are non-union city employees. Mayor Amy Sangiolo, go ahead.
Sorry. I just want to say the problem with that is that so if you look at like our fire department, right? Our fire department, if we have a vaccine mandate and it's you either vax or you lose your job, then we're going to have to go to mutual aid, right? And mutual aid communities, we have to make sure that they also have a vax mandate, because if they don't, that means we're going to supplement our workforce with folks who might not be vaccinated, right? I mean, we have to make sure that there's a regional plan if we're going to do that. So that's why I am considering that test to stay as an alternative. Thank you.
So continuity of operations is top of mind for me, but so is the health of our community. Firefighters are right in the face of, they're doing medical calls. They are up close and personal in emergencies. So we know that 95% plus of our adults who live here in Newton are vaccinated. Our workers need to be for their health, for their families, for our community's health.
Councilor Sangiolo, how would you rate the way the mayor handled the pandemic?
On what? On what kind of scale?
Yeah, whatever scale you want. How would you evaluate it? What's your
So
impression?
I think there was a mismanagement of our reopening of our schools. I think that could have been handled much better. There certainly wasn't the city interference, and there should have been an oversight over the ventilation and the testing of our HVAC systems. It didn't happen for during the summer of 2020 for a fall 2020 reopening. So that was a problem. There was an issue with creating that medical advisory medical advisory council, which didn't again happen until there were 144 physicians who protested and gave a petition in order to do that. There was an asymptomatic testing put in place to get our teachers back in school for fall 2020 reopening. So there are a lot of folks who are upset with that. I'm hearing from seniors as I knock on doors that there was an outreach to them because they're not on a list. They don't go to the senior center normally. They're isolated. So could there have been more done? Yes. And what about the fact that there were a lot of small homeowner renovations and projects that were shut down during the pandemic, while the larger projects were able to move forward? That caused hardship. That wasn't based on medical advice or advice from the scientific community. So yes, could it have been handled better? Absolutely.
Mayor Fuller?
I'm actually really proud of our team for the amazing work that they did. Could we have done some things better? You betcha. But 24/7, I've been focused on this. As our understanding of the virus kept evolving, we kept changing our management. We used data and science. We listened to medical experts like Drs. Rochelle Walensky and Ashish Jha. And even as the highly contagious Delta variant came, we switched it up yet again. And Amy, just so you know, we called our senior services staff called every single senior, I think it was age 65, maybe it was age 70 and older here in the city. So we reached everyone, did our best. We do this public health work thoughtfully and deliberately. We invested $5 million plus in our ventilation systems. I think we have the gold standard of ventilation in our cities right now. We did frequent newsletters. Last March, April, May, we were doing them 3 times a week or so. We kept everyone informed. And our Newtonians have been magnificent, helping neighbors, getting vaccinated. And I would also add, we had in place a fabulous emergency management team, which included retired Fire Chief Proya and our Commissioner of Health and Human Services to help get us through.
I just have to push back. I know you keep dropping Rochelle Walensky's name, but I've got the emails that show that she was offering advice on the 3-foot, 6-foot rule, which you guys rejected. I don't know, you keep saying that you're listening to this advice, but the emails are there. They show that she and Dr. Sadler were advocating for 3-foot rather than 6-foot rules, and you decided to say no. So you rejected that advice. I also was on the Safer Teachers, Safer Students group who was advocating back in November to try to get asymptomatic testing. I was on the phone with these testing labs and these testing companies providing all the costs for those asymptomatic tests. And again, your Health and Human Services Department, as well as you, said, we've got a handle on it. You didn't get it in place until April. It's too late. The ventilation system, yes, you spent $4.5 million on upgrading our ventilation system. Too late. Again, not ready to open in fall of 2020. And that's what makes parents so angry.
It was a tough year for parents, but I'll tell you what, our children, the ones who needed the most services and schooling, they were in school full time in September. And I'll just add, even how you're framing this right now shows it a little bit of difference between being an outsider and being the mayor. Because what Dr. Jha asked this question just a couple nights ago, if you were what would he suggest to a Commissioner of Health and Human Services or a mayor when the CDC is recommending one thing, but doctors in their community are recommending something else? Said, stick with the CDC. And you know what? That's what we did. We very much listened to the experts within our community, and we made judgment calls. And it does require judgment. You take the best data, you move with the best speed you can. You try to do it in a timely, thoughtful, serious, robust way.
We're going to have to stop there. I'm grateful to both of you for your time and your thoughtfulness and your participation. I did want to give you an opportunity to each do a closing statement, and I'm just opening my stopwatch. This is the one time we will time you. Mayor Fuller, we will go first. You have 90 seconds to tell us why we should re-elect you on November 2nd.
Thank you so much. And I'm going to just do this. Hats off to you, Greg. It's been a pleasure working with the chamber. We promised 4 years ago that Newton would beat the moment, and we did. Even in this crisis, we supported our restaurants and small businesses. We created outdoor dining on the street and parking spaces, parking lots, and our parks. We issued $610,000 worth of small business recovery grants, set up Project Pop-Up, created Newton Hires. We completed business-friendly makeovers in West Newton and Newtonville. We closed Bramway, and we centered equity in our response to this crisis, focusing on helping our lowest resource residents. What do I see for the next 4 years? Prioritizing funding for our students and investing in our school buildings, rebounding from COVID by supporting the vulnerable, our small businesses, and our nonprofits, institutionalizing DEI, building more affordable housing, continuing to invest in roads and parks and playing fields, focusing on our seniors with a new senior center, expanding NUMO, making accessible commuter rail stations with frequent service a reality, continuing to set environmental standards in the Commonwealth, keeping everyone informed, listening carefully. We have a lot of important and necessary work ahead. My sleeves are rolled up. I'm all in. And I'll tell you, I'm optimistic about our city's future. We're doing great things. I ask for your vote.
I need to stop you there. And I appreciate that. Councilor Amy Sangiolo, I'll give you 2 minutes, since that's what the mayor took, to tell us why we should vote for you on November 2nd.
It's okay. I don't need 2 minutes, Greg. Most of you know I am an attorney and a consumer advocate with the housing team at the Attorney General's office. My husband, John, and I moved here 26 years ago, and I am also a Newton City. I was a former city councilor who served for 20 years. Look, I'm going to be an advocate and a champion for Newton residents as we face many challenges. I'll bring the perspective of a former Newton Public Schools parent to help restore confidence in our schools and ensure that our teachers have the resources that they need so that every child can succeed and reach their full potential. And I'm going to help address the mental health and well-being of our kids. I'm going to use my legal advocacy skills and my 20 years of city council experience, which I alluded to earlier, to address our out-of-scale development, preserve our neighborhoods and historic resources, and increase our supply of affordable housing opportunities. Look, I'm going to manage our city finances and resources, invest in our fields, make our streets and sidewalks safe and accessible for all users, and support our small businesses and nonprofits to help them and our village centers thrive. I'm going to create opportunities for our arts and culture community to be engaged and compensated, provide programs and services for our seniors and our most vulnerable residents, set, measure, and meet ambitious climate action goals, diversify our workforce and our governmental bodies to truly reflect and represent the diversity in our community by hiring a diversity, equity, and inclusion director, and give residents in all of our villages real equity and inclusion in planning and decision-making that affect our lives and transform our city. I'm running to give Newton voters a choice and a voice in shaping the future of our city. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. And thanks to both of you for your time today, for putting up with me for the past 2 decades, and for your willingness to serve. So appreciate it. Thanks to UMass and Mount Ida and Century Bank for sponsoring today, and for everybody who participated in this conversation. Have a great day, everybody.
Take care.
Bye.